My name is Gavin Evans, and this is my review of Booksmart. And this review will have some spoilers, so if you haven't seen it, go and watch it, then come back and watch this review because I will be going in depth. Now, with Don't Worry Darling coming out this week, I figured I'd go back and rewatch and review Booksmart. And it's a movie I've always enjoyed, but I was just curious to see, would I still love it as much as I used to? And the answer is a resounding yes. This is one of the best comedies of the past decade. And I think a big part of that is due to Olivia Wilde's directing. I think this movie is brilliantly directed. She's able to tell a well-structured, well-written, well-acted story incredibly well, but she also adds a few small touches here and there that really do elevate this movie. There was this one scene where there was stop motion dolls, which was something so unique and hilarious. You also got this one dance scene between Molly and Nick, which goes full musical, which I really enjoyed. The swimming scene is so perfectly captured of Amy going up and down in the pool, and then she realizes Ryan's kissing Nick. Like the way that reveal is built up to is so masterfully handled. And then you've also got the amazing, heartbreaking fight scene between Molly and Amy, where they're just not holding back and saying every mean thing that comes to their mind. And I've seen the script, and I know what gets said, but I still think Olivia Wilde's decision to mute them and just let the music take over was such a confident, brilliant decision that really pays off. Because at that point, it doesn't matter what they're saying. They're just trying to hold each other. And you really get it through that one smart decision. So I think Olivia Wilde's directing here is way better than most comedies get. And I also think this movie is so perfectly acted. Everyone stands out. Everyone has a distinct personality. And that just makes this movie all the more better. Caitlin Dever is one of the best up-and-coming actresses in my opinion. She's so amazing in everything that she acts in, and that's definitely the case here. What she's able to add to this character is just so well acted. The way that she comes across nervous and awkward, it really feels authentic to the character. And I think she hits the comedic delivery that she needs to. And then you've also got Beanie Feldstein, who I also found to be really great here. And the way these two bounce off each other is so perfectly captured through the performances. Like you really buy this friendship. So when things start to go south, you're actually emotionally affected by it. You've also got Jessica Williams, who plays Miss Fine, and I think she does a really good job. But that said, her going to a high school party, very questionable. I'd say a Westo. It's not nearly as bad as Zoe Deschanel in Bridge to Terabithia, but it's not good either. But she does a fine job with her performance. You've also got Jason Sudeikis, who I think is really funny in the brief time he's in this movie. You've got Lisa Kudrow and Will Forte, who are barely in this movie at all, but they're still funny in the time they are in it. You've got Mason Gooding as Nick, who has a very unique personality and stands out in that way. You've got Eduardo Francis, who as soon as I saw him, I'm like, oh! I forgot, that's Argyle. He's in this movie, but he plays a character named Theo, and I think he plays this kind of character so perfectly. You also got Nico Hiwaga, who plays Tanner, and he's not in this movie much, but he still has a distinct personality. You got Billy Lord, who I think is absolutely hilarious here. The way that she shows up at every party just cracked me up, and she's just so filled with life and personality, and she could have been a character that goes too over the top, but I found it really worked here. You got Skylar Gisindo, who plays Jared, and I think he plays him incredibly well. At first, he comes across as a stereotype, but when you get to know him, he's just a guy wanting to be accepted, and I think he brings that to this character incredibly well. You've got Diana Silvos, who plays Hope, and I think she's great here. She comes across as this moody, bitchy person, but by the end of this movie, you're like, you know what? I started to like her. I think they pull a 180 with her character incredibly well. And I think the one scene between her and Amy feels very authentic. Then you've also got Molly Gordon, who once again doesn't have a ton to do. But there's still enough to her character, and she's still able to elevate it, that she still stands out in her own way. So for a cast of this size to be filled with just so many distinct personalities with every performance being at the very least good is incredibly impressive. And I think most of all, it is able to capture that high school feel. When I was watching this movie, there were so many people that I remember from my time in high school that I'm just like, oh, that person reminds me of this person, and that person reminds me of that person. And I also love how this movie is completely reliant on the fact that at first you see them nothing more as stereotypes. But as the movie progresses, you start to get to know each one better and better, and then they all kind of feel like fully forged characters by the end of it. Some were given more attention than others, but I still think everyone's given a proper amount of depth and nuance. And I think the way that you view certain high school movies and even your time in high school as everyone's some sort of stereotype, the fact that this movie is able to bring such humanity to each and every character is beyond impressive. And I totally relate to Molly's realization that some of these people are much smarter than you think they are. You know, one thing when I was in high school that I remember is that when you realize that some of the jocks, some of the bullies are actually really smart and will succeed in life, you're like, wait, what? And the movie captures that feeling so perfectly. And I also love how this movie taps into that feeling of graduating, the uncertainty of life after that point. You don't know what's going to happen. You know that life will change. Friendships won't be the same. And you just got to enjoy it while it lasts. And I think the movie captures that so authentically and so perfectly. So the script is incredibly smart. It's incredibly well directed. It's very well acted. And it also manages to be very funny. There's this one scene early on where Amy's singing a song to Molly where she's just like, I don't want you to think that I'm concerned, but I'm getting a little concerned, and her comedic delivery is just perfect. There's this one scene early on where Nick is catching food with his mouse, and Molly's like, what are you doing? He goes like, I gotta catch it with my mouse. It's very complicated. You wouldn't understand. There's this one scene with Jason Sudeikis where he's telling them about this detective story, and it manages to be very funny. There's this one scene where Jared tells everyone his PIN number, which was really funny. The whole panda in the very end of the movie cracked me up. I thought the pizza delivery guy and the way that pays off very later on was very smart and hilarious. I think the shotgun line by Caitlin Dever is just pitch perfect. Like she's getting arrested and they're putting her in the back of the vehicle and she's like, shotgun. And she's like, just kidding, I don't have one. That is just, I think it's a very funny movie. And on top of that, it's able to be emotional. Like I said, that fight between Molly and Amy has so much weight behind it. And it is heartbreaking to see these two close friends just go at each other like this. And then you get that scene afterwards of Molly realizing why Amy wanted to leave when she did. And she starts to understand her more. And then even at the end, that graduation speak that Molly has about how she sees them all now, it has emotion behind it. In that last scene where Molly drops Amy off at the airport, it's emotional. I tear up a little bit because you really do come to care for these two and their friendship. So I think the movie just excels in so many different areas. Now I do got some issues with it. My number one issue is the soundtrack. And I think they picked songs that fit this kind of movie very well. But sometimes it just feels like there's too many songs playing. Like in the first 15 minutes of this movie, they introduced the school with a song, they introduced another character with a song, and it just feels kind of like the beginning of the 2016 Suicide Squad, and it does feel a bit messy. So I wish the soundtrack was handled a bit better. I do love the fact though that they used one of my favorite songs ever, Open by Wire, at the end of this movie. That was such a pleasant surprise. I also think the girl that Amy likes in this movie, Ryan, is like the most bland character ever, and typically you want a character to end up who they like, but in this case I'm just like, what do you see in her? She is so boring and bland, and she doesn't really get brought up in the middle section of this movie. You know that Amy likes her at the start, and then when she gets to the party, she's trying to hang out with her. But there's this big middle section where she just completely disappears. And my last issue with this movie is clearly very progressive. There's lots of progressive buzzwords in this movie, and I can get on my nerves in certain moments, but that's how the characters are. I don't think it's the whole point of the movie. So even though there's lots of feminist buzzwords and they talk about gender in one scene, it's not the point of this movie. You know, you compare it to something like The Boys Season 3, in which I'm supposed to think that Huey is a toxic male for not wanting to die and for wanting to protect his girlfriend. I can't get behind that. Total disconnect. You look at something else, like Neighbors 2, in which the whole movie throws away the funny premise in favor of feminism, then it really hurts that movie. But here, it feels like the characters are that way, it's in the dialogue, it's definitely in the movie, but you're still able to enjoy it. It does just get on my nerves in certain moments. But look, this is a great movie. It really is. I think it manages to be hilarious, emotional. It's very smart. The entire cast does a fantastic job, and Olivia Wilde directs the hell out of this thing. What she's able to bring to it certainly elevates it. So I can't recommend this movie enough if you haven't seen it. I'm going to go ahead and give Booksmart an 8 out of 10. Okay, have you seen Booksmart? What did you think about it? Let me know in the comments down below. Make sure you like, make sure you comment, make sure you subscribe. Stay tuned for some more videos soon, and Gavin out.